We all know Grinch, the big, fluffy green dude who can't stand our favorite winter holiday. The character was created by Dr. Seuss, and he first appeared in his book in 1957. By the way, Grinch wasn't green in the book. It was black and white. Also, if you're wondering how old Grinch is, he's 53, the same age Dr. Seuss was when he wrote the book. But let's learn more about the character. We all know how the story goes. A furry creature is living in seclusion on a cliff outside the town of Whoville. The citizens are obsessed with the winter holiday and make such a big fuss around it every year, and also a lot of noise. Grinch lives on Mount Crumpet, away from everyone, but can still hear happy people. He's annoyed with joyful citizens, their happiness, and the holidays, so he decides to cancel the holiday. He steals all presents and decorations the night before it. His plan doesn't work quite as planned. The next morning, he finds the citizens singing joyfully anyways. This makes him understand that the holiday spirit isn't about gifts and decorations. So, in the end, he comes around, returns everything he had stolen, and even celebrates with everyone else. The original story from Dr. Seuss, which only takes about 12 minutes to read, got immediate recognition and became a symbol of the winter holidays. There were offers to animate it, but the author was very resistant to animating any of his books, for several reasons. Reason number 1. He didn't want the series to become more famous than his books and didn't want a movie or animation to be the first thing people think of when they hear about his work. The second reason is that Dr. Seuss was super meticulous and he felt like no one could fit his standards. In the 1960s, a guy was continuously approaching him with the idea of animating the Grinch story. The guy was a great animator that was as perfectionist as Dr. Seuss himself, and he broke the ice by sending the author an amazing depiction of Dr. Seuss's famous character, the Cat in the Hat. After some negotiations, Dr. Seuss gave his permission for a TV adaptation of Grinch. 9 years after the book was published, the first animated TV adaptation aired. Dr. Seuss, the author of the book, wrote the lyrics to all the songs in the movie. Also, even though the Grinch was black and white in the book, in his TV adaptation, the director, inspired by the green rental cars he had driven, made him the same green color. We all think this green makes Grinch kinda chic, even though the intention was the exact opposite. Anyway, since then, Grinch was established green. Also in the book, the citizens of Whoville were furry, and they weren't wearing any clothes. They also didn't have shoes, but female residents of Whoville had high-heeled feet, so the cartoon was quite adjusted. The animation was an absolute success. It still sits with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, claiming the movie to be an ultimate holiday story. The Grinch was named one of the greatest cartoon characters of all time. The word Grinch is now used in everyday language. This is what people now call a grumpy person with an anti-holiday spirit. People wanted more. Fans were constantly writing to Dr. Seuss, asking for more Grinch content. In 1977, which is over 20 years after the release of the original story, the author wrote a Halloween film. Halloween is a Grinch night. The next appearance of Grinch was in the famous 2000 live-action movie starring Jim Carrey. The movie was so exciting that even Queen Elizabeth II herself attended the London premiere in London. The movie got mixed reviews, but it's widely loved by people across the world, and Grinch is one of the actor's most iconic performances. Other actors who were considered to play Grinch were Eddie Murphy and Jack Nicholson. The role wasn't easy for Jim because of the heavy makeup he had to get into every time to become Grinch. The first working day lasted about 8.5 hours. However, rumor has it that the preparation was so long that the actor almost quit the movie, saying that it was too much. Gladly, a solution was found. A CIA counselor was hired to teach Jim suffering resistance techniques to help him go through the makeup process, which was pretty complex. It would take around 3 hours to do the makeup and get into the costume, and an additional hour at the end of the day to scrape the makeup off the actor's face. Jim Carrey went through the makeup chair around 100 times. This is 400 hours or 16 days in total of just sitting still in a chair, doing nothing. and not even being able to itch whatever was itching. The actor said that after going through it so many times, he learned to be the calmest person, no matter what. Still, the way to Zen wasn't easy. The director of the movie decided to support him. One day, he got all the makeup and the costume on too, and spent the whole day on set directing, dressed as Grinch. When Jim first saw the director in the costume, he thought it was a stunt double and got angry, saying that the dude looked nothing like him. Just imagine what it looked like when two Grinches were interacting on set, a taller one and a shorter one. I'm sure that everyone around had a blast. By the way, the fur that is used in the costume is yak hair that's dyed green. The yellow lenses were important so that no one recognized Jim behind the costume and could only see Grinch. Those lenses were the biggest problem and were hurting a lot. At times, Jim absolutely couldn't tolerate them anymore, so in some scenes, he acted without them, and they were added later in post-production with CGI. But what happened to Grinch after the day when he decided to celebrate with the people from Whoville? He probably lived happily ever after there with his new friends, but fans have a theory even about his afterlife. They say that Jack Skellington from Tim Burton's movie is the Grinch in the afterlife. Let me spill some facts. First, Tim Burton could have directed the 2000 Grinch movie, but in the end, the director's chair was given to Ron Howard. Grinch's heart grew 3 times bigger, symbolizing both that he became a better person, but also that his love for the winter holiday supposedly grew big. Supposedly, Grinch loved the holiday for the rest of his life. So if he really became Jack Skellington in the afterlife, it explains Jack's sudden obsession with the holiday. He doesn't remember his previous life, and he doesn't remember the holiday. But he immediately gets obsessed with it because his heart remembers the love and it draws him. But also, both characters have cute sidekicks. Both of them have dogs. Grinch's dog is Max, and Jack's dog is called Zero. Zero can very possibly be Max as a ghost dog. There's no official confirmation or even comments regarding the theory, but it's an interesting suggestion, and if the movie does exist in the same universe, I'd say that it's a perfect way to combine them. There's another fan theory that possibly explains how Grinch got his dog. As we know, Grinch lives on Mount Crumpet, outside Whoville. Every year he gets unwanted gifts from the town that citizens dump in the trash chute. So, some fans suggest that one day, Grinch discovered Max there, who was once someone's holiday present. But it's not the only theory. Grinch occasionally visits the mailroom in the town, so he could have picked up stranded Max somewhere there once. Another unofficial story called The Grinch Meets His Max, published in 1998, tells how the dog got lost on Mount Crumpet, and Grinch found him there and took him home. Both misfits found each other, and that's what's most important.
It's winter 1980. We're in the small town of Lengby. 19-year-old Jean Hilliard is driving home after meeting with a friend. She takes a shortcut and turns into an icy, slippery road. In the dark, she loses control of the rear-wheel drive car. The vehicle crashes into a ditch. Emergency lights, snowfall, night, and a hard frost. Jean gets out of the vehicle. She's wearing only a light winter coat, mittens, and cowboy boots. The air temperature is much lower than in a freezer. Jean is sure that her friend lives nearby, so she goes that way. She climbs a high hill and realizes she's taken the wrong route. It seems she's gotten lost. The girl wanders a couple more miles and notices her other friend's house in the distance. Freezing, she walks there. Then everything turns black. Jean loses consciousness. The next morning, rancher Wally Nelson wakes up in a great mood. It's the holiday season. There's a winter fairy tale outside the window. He leaves his house and notices the body of Jean Hilliard lying just a few feet from his porch. Wally approaches the girl, shakes her, and is horrified. Her body is stiff and cold like frozen wood. Her eyes are open and don't move. Her hair is frozen. She just doesn't look alive. But Wally sees that she's still breathing. Jean has managed to survive. Wally wants to put her in his car to bring her to the doctor, but the girl's body doesn't bend and can't fit into the auto. It feels like a statue. He takes a bigger car and rushes to the hospital as fast as possible. The doctors take Jean, but they don't think she has any chance to make it. Her hand is so hard and frozen that no needle can penetrate it. A low temperature, glassy eyes, and muscles as hard as stone are all the results of emergency mode. Her body has directed all the blood to the vital organs to ensure their functioning. That's why other parts of her body look so lifeless, and her skin and muscles don't react to anything. The doctors decide to put heating pads on the girl to warm her up. Her family hopes for her recovery, but right now, all they can do is just wait. Frostbite is so dangerous because all that frozen liquid begins to expand. Fill a small bottle with water and put it in the freezer for a few hours. Then take it out, and you'll see that the bottle seems to have expanded or even cracked because of the increased volume of the liquid. The same thing happens inside our bodies. We consist of almost 70% water. When it freezes, its particles turn into ice crystals and tear cell membranes. Ice fragments can stretch and destroy tissue. This is called frostbite. Also, our body can slow down all internal processes in extreme cold conditions to save strength and energy. The heart makes fewer beats, and the lungs stop consuming lots of oxygen. Metabolism slows down. It happened with Jean, and perhaps it is what saved her life that day. She was lying in the snow in severe frost for about 6 hours. But why didn't the ice particles start destroying her cell membranes? How did her body withstand such damage and manage to survive? Back at the hospital, doctors are happy to watch Jean get better. Warm blood spreads through the frozen vessels and brings her body back to life. Surprisingly, ice crystals haven't damaged her muscles and skin. A few hours later, the girl regains consciousness. By noon, she starts talking. Jean doesn't know what happened. She remembers walking to her friend's house and then waking up in the hospital. What worries her most right now is that her father's car is somewhere in a ditch. As it turns out, the girl fell down and crawled on all fours to Wally Nelson's house. She doesn't remember it, but apparently her brain activated the survival instinct that night. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to crawl the last few feet. Jean passed out at the door and stayed there for 6 hours. Doctors examine the girl and understand that she's completely healthy. Soon, she's discharged from the hospital. This case isn't unique. One professor of emergency medicine, David Plummer, said he'd seen about 12 similar cases over the past 10 years when patients had survived severe frostbite. Jean returns home and finds out that she has become famous. People write about her in newspapers, want to interview her, and film documentary shows. Her case has attracted the attention of many doctors around the world, but no one has been able to find out exactly how she managed to survive. In the case of humans, such recoveries seem like an absolute miracle. But many creatures of the natural world can adapt their bodies to extreme conditions. One of them is the tree frog. These animals live mainly in temperate and tropical parts of Eurasia. Sometimes they have to contend with cold weather. Their body injects glucose into the bloodstream when they feel they're freezing, and the content of their cells turns into syrup. Sugar lowers the freezing point of water. So, tree frogs have adapted to such conditions. The water outside their cells can freeze. Their bodies can get as hard as ice cubes, but they will be alive, feeling great. Then, when it gets warmer, they fully recover. The blood fills their body and puts all their muscles in motion. But one of the most amazing animals that can withstand freezing temperatures is the ghoulish icefish. It's transparent and somewhat like a jellyfish. It swims in the dark, cold Antarctic waters. The ghoulish icefish feels comfortable there because of the antifreeze in its body. More precisely, it's a unique substance that is like antifreeze in its functions. This liquid doesn't allow the animal's cells, organs, and the whole body to freeze. There are no red blood cells in the fish's blood that transport oxygen throughout its body. This is the only vertebrate with such a superpower. There are organisms on our planet that use the cold to prolong their life. Scientists have found some of them in the ice of Siberia. Those are microscopic, multi-celled creatures, like small worms, that can live in a freezer for about 10 years. But the worms from Siberia were about 24,000 years old. The scientists transported them to the laboratory and thawed them. The worms came to life and began to multiply immediately after all those centuries of sleep. Their bodies can go into cryptobiosis. This is when an entire frozen organism has minimal vital functions. The analysis showed that the worms could stay in this mode for tens of thousands of years. And there are many such animals on our planet. Also, these creatures are some of the world's most resistant to radiation. They are practically invulnerable. Now back to our story. It's possible that Jean Hilliard's body went into short cryptobiosis. Perhaps there was some non-freezing liquid in the girl's blood, but no one knows for sure. These days, she has an ordinary job and almost doesn't remember that day. Further research on this topic can help scientists create special medicines that can help in freezing temperatures. Just imagine that you could safely go outside in the winter wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Steam would be coming off your body, and the ice under your feet would be melting. You'd feel hot inside. A dream, perhaps. But realistically, winter coat manufacturers would, of course, never allow it.
Ah, yes, everyone loves a holiday. But figuring out what to pack in your luggage can be a daunting task, especially when you're limited on weight and baggage space. Not to mention, you're likely to do some holiday shopping on your adventure away from home. So, you're going to need extra space on your return for all those souvenirs you've collected. Accumulating too much weight or bulk can end up costing you a handsome fee with the airline if you're not properly prepared. But you can now relax. You just focus on booking your vacation. We'll take care of your luggage with these handy traveling tips. No doubt your clothes are going to take up the bulk of your luggage. Considering most airline standards permit 1 bag for most local trips and up to 2 bags for longer distances, that doesn't grant you a whole lot of space if you plan on being fashionable on your getaway, especially in the winter. However, this doesn't mean you have to turn your undergarments inside out for repeated use. The key here is to be clever with how you pack. Firstly, you might want to consider how you're folding your clothes. The most space-efficient method to store your wardrobe in a suitcase for travel is to roll up each item. Think of your clothes like those sleeping bags you used to take on your camping trips. They always seem too thick for their compacted covers. But with perseverance, you could roll it up tight enough to fit inside. Now, you don't need to wrestle with your clothes quite as much, but the same principle here applies. Start by folding your shirts, pants, and whatever else you plan on packing neatly, similar to how you might find them on a clothing store shelf. Then, when you have them in a relatively rectangular or squared-off shape, roll them up tightly. Now that you have your little clothes logs, start packing them into your bag. And behold, extra space! Now, here's something we've all experienced arriving at our holiday destination. We drop our suitcase on the hotel bed, open it up, only to find all our clothes unfurled and scattered like a tornado stormed through our bag. Your luggage has had a rough journey from your home to your holiday destination. It's been dragged through airport terminals, tossed around by baggage handlers, and rocked back and forth during in-flight turbulence. A simple stationary item, rubber bands, will help you keep your clothes neat. Now that you've got them rolled up, place a couple of rubber bands around them to keep them from unfurling. This is an especially neat trick if you want to roll an outfit together as one. Maybe you've got head-to-toe denim that you can't wait to rock on your getaway. Fold up your clothes as before, then layer the different items of your ideal outfit atop each other. Roll them up as one, then use the rubber bands to keep them together. You can preemptively decide your day-to-day outfits before you even board the plane. However, you may still prefer to fold your clothes, especially business or formal shirts and pants. Lucky for you, we have a handy trick for that too. Instead of folding each item individually, we're going to lay it out all on top of each other. Start with your shirts and tops, alternating with one on top and one on the bottom, keeping the necks of your shirts at the center. Work your way down to your pants and smaller items until they're all laid out flat. Try to keep your pants in the middle. Finally, start folding your items in on themselves, with the shirts creating the outer layer until you end up with a neat bundle, like a present. You should be able to sit your bundle squarely into your bag. Want to save even more luggage space? Instead of putting your undergarments and socks into their own section, try fitting them into available spaces and gaps within the rest of your luggage. If you plan on taking a cap with you, for instance, the inside of your headwear is a great space to store your socks. This applies to other small luggage items too, such as phone chargers and ties. Though keep in mind that you can also lay your ties and belts out flat across the clothes in your luggage to conserve space. And if you're really limited on baggage size, say all you have is a carry-on for a fortnight-long trip, here's another method. Get yourself some compression bags to store your clothes in. These bags will compact multiple sets of clothes into the size of a small laptop bag. Fold up the clothes you intend to pack and store them into the compression bag. You should be able to fit 8 to 10 standard clothes items, or a few bulky ones. Once you've filled the bag, seal it and squeeze the air out through the built-in one-way pressure valve. The easiest way to do this is either by rolling it, and you should be pretty good at rolling your clothes by now, or by using your knees to apply pressure. You should be able to fit 2 to 4 of these compression bags in your standard carry-on suitcase, which is especially helpful if you want to save money by avoiding checked-in luggage. And you can take even more clothes on board with you if you stick them into a pillowcase. The best thing about this tip is that it also doubles as a comfy pillow for you to rest your head on during the flight. If you do have a bit more space to spare, another great way to keep your stuff organized is with packing cubes. It might not be as space efficient as compression bags, but a lot of travelers prefer them for tidier and well-organized packing. You might like to divide them by outfits or clothes types, such as one for pants and one for tops. You can easily purchase packing cubes from most online retail services and travel and camping stores. There are also packing cubes specially designed for one or more pairs of shoes. This is a great way to compact the space your shoes would otherwise take up in your luggage, and to keep your clean clothes from coming into contact with your footwear. Nobody wants their tops to smell like feet, right? If you're still struggling to bring all your items with you inside your suitcase, there are a couple more tricks that you can use for that extra bit of weight without the extra cost. The most obvious of which is to use your own body. That's right, time to layer up. Pick out all your bulky items and wear as many as you can manage. You can try wearing some shorts under your pants or several layers of your winter wear, such as your sweater, jacket, and coat, all over the top of one another. You might be sweating a little, but most airports and planes are well air-conditioned. You can always shed some layers once you've boarded your flight. At least you'll have some warm wear to snuggle up in if you do get cold up there in the clouds. If you don't want to wear all those layers, there's actually another type of bag you can carry on the plane with you, free of charge. Get yourself a duty-free bag from any of the duty-free stores in the airport. You can even hang on to it for next time. Store all your extra items in your duty-free bag and carry it onto your flight at no additional cost. It's also worth considering what type of luggage you're using. More importantly, how much it weighs. A lot of people forget that the standard 15 pounds permitted by most airlines includes the actual weight of their suitcase. The bag itself can often weigh up to 4 to 6 pounds. That's a huge chunk of your weight in the bag alone. So, when you're shopping for your luggage, take into account how much it weighs. Choosing a lighter bag will give you more space for the items you want to take with you. Stick to some of these handy tips and you'll be on your way with no shortage of luggage and some extra money to spend on your vacation. Happy flying!
You may think the Earth is pretty big, but the Sun makes up almost 99.9% of the mass of the whole solar system. The rest of the mass is made up by the planets and their satellites, asteroids, comets, gas, and dust. It's around 93 million miles away from our planet, but it keeps us warm every day. Its temperature is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but the space surrounding it is still cold as ice. To understand this, we need to distinguish between heat and temperature. Heat is the energy inside some object. Temperature is something that tells us if that object is hot or cold. When the heat is transferred to that object, it makes its temperature go up. When the object is losing heat, the temperature goes down. Heat can be transferred in 3 different ways. The sun does it through radiation. That means it's releasing heat in the form of light. Your body radiates heat too, as infrared waves. That's why thermal imaging cameras will detect that you're in the room even at night. The hotter the object, the more heat it will radiate. The temperature only affects matter. Since space is mostly a vacuum, it doesn't have enough particles for heat to transfer in any other way than through radiation. When the heat from the sun gets to an object, the atoms start absorbing energy, but the heat can't transfer since there's no matter in space. Those rare atoms and molecules in space will absorb the heat. And they'll simply stay that way, while the cold vacuum will stay cold. There's a lot of matter inside Earth's atmosphere, so the energy of the sun can transfer easily. But if you put an object outside of the Earth's atmosphere in direct sunlight, it would end up heated to 250 degrees Fahrenheit because it's matter made of atoms and molecules. The temperature of the vacuum is negative 454 degrees Fahrenheit. That means, depending on where you are, space can either burn or freeze you. The sun isn't actually yellow. It emits light over a wide range of wavelengths. We can tell both its temperature and color by the peak in its spectrum. For instance, cooler stars will appear red, and hotter stars will be blue with yellow, orange, and white stars in between. When it comes to the sun, the spectrum peaks at a wavelength we'd usually call green, but our eye perceives it differently. So, the shade of green in combination with other wavelengths from the spectrum is going to look white to the human eye. We generally see the sun as yellow because our atmosphere scatters blue light more efficiently than the red one. During sunrise and sunset, there's more red light in the spectrum of the sun, which gives us amazing sceneries. Sunspots are part of the sun's visible surface that are on average way cooler than the sun itself. They overlap with parts that have an increased magnetic field. These parts don't allow the release of heat to the sun's visible surface. That way, the rest of the sun's surface is 3 times brighter than those sunspots. That contrast makes them appear almost black. If we could take a sunspot apart from the sun and place it somewhere in the night sky, it would be different, as bright as the moon when we see it from the Earth. All the planets in our solar system spin in the same direction because they were formed from one protoplanetary cloud, except for Uranus and Venus. They have probably had some strong impact on them that made them spin in the opposite direction. But it's different with galaxies. They don't usually form the same cloud of dust and particles. Also, they're not randomly distributed across space. They come in filaments, dense, slender strands of dark matter and galaxies, with voids in between. Proto-galaxies are linked by gravitational forces in small areas of space. This is probably because of the distribution of dark matter throughout the universe. The matter in the filaments moves in a corkscrew motion and goes towards the densest area. So, there might be a common direction galaxies tend to spin, but it's mostly random. There's a possibility we'll see a lunar elevator one day. Yep, a cable anchored to the surface of the moon. It would stretch 250,000 miles. We wouldn't be able to directly attach it to our planet because both Earth and the moon are moving. But we could keep it terminated high in our planet's orbit. Some researchers believe we could build such an elevator for a few $billion. The moon has resources we could definitely use. A rare form of helium found there could be of use in fusion power stations on our planet. Also, we could take some other rare elements and use them in smartphones and the rest of electronics. So, after around 53 trips up and down, the elevator could pay for itself. The cable would be as thick as a pencil, but its weight would be around 40 tons. It could even be made of materials we already have here on Earth, with no need to invent something. There could even be a combination of two elevators. A spacecraft would winch up an elevator from the surface of our planet to a space station. Then it would be flung towards the moon. There would be another elevator to finally lower it down to the surface of the moon. Planets in our solar system have predictable and stable orbits. But gas-giant collisions could have happened at an early stage when a planetary system was still forming. In case of a head-on collision, two gas giants would merge. They wouldn't end up losing their mass, the materials in their gaseous envelopes, or the ones in their solid cores. Such a collision at a higher speed would cause the loss of the major part of the envelope gas, and very high speeds, boom, both planets are gone. It's different if it's not a head-on collision. If two cores manage to completely avoid each other, gas giants won't merge, but they'll lose some of the mass. Gas giants might even change their shape due to such collisions. Astronomers found out there's a galaxy extremely far away from us that looks similar to our Milky Way. We now see it as it was when the universe was only 1.4 billion years old, and now it's 13.8 billion years old. It took over 12 billion years for the light to come from this faraway galaxy and reach our planet. This galaxy is peaceful, stable, and surprisingly non-chaotic, unlike all other galaxies that were quite turbulent in their early stages. To leave the Milky Way, we'd have to travel around 25,000 light-years away from the center of the galaxy, or 500 light-years vertically. Our galaxy is a disk of stars that spreads around 100,000 light-years across and is 1,000 light-years thick. The Sun, its central star, is located halfway from the center of the galaxy and close to the middle of the disk in the vertical direction. We'd have to go further than its edge to get away from the halo that surrounds the Milky Way, old stars, diffuse gas, and globular clusters. If you wanted to go even further to see the Milky Way in all its glory, you'd have to travel 48,000 light-years vertically. At this moment, we don't even have a telescope we can send there. There are central stars that eat planets. Our solar system is stable, unlike many other planetary systems. So we don't have to be afraid the Earth or some other planet will change its orbit and go towards the Sun. But at least a quarter of other planetary systems with orbiting stars similar to the Sun have a pretty chaotic past. In some of them, there are planets that used to move around, and their unpredictable migrations have disrupted the paths of some other planets, or even pushed them outside of their orbit. That means some planets probably have fallen into the central star. When that happens, the planet gets dissolved in the outer layer of the star, which means it gets eaten.
Now, who would have guessed that the most important accessory in your car might be a nail file? In case you need to get your nails done right away? Nah, to refresh your wipers. Wipers have a rubber that cleans the glass. It wipes water and particles of dirt and insects off the windshield. Over time, this rubber strip gets covered with a layer of dirt, and the wipers stop doing their thing. So all you have to do is take the wipers off and rub them with a nail file. This will remove the layer of dirt, and your wipers will last for a few more months. This is especially important during the cold season, when you need to constantly clean your car of snow. This trick will not only help you see through your windshield better and make driving safer, but it will also save you a lot of money on new wipers. Hey, you parked badly and hit your car on a pole. Well, a small dimple can be fixed with an ice cube. Just lean a piece of dry ice on the impact site and voila! The bumper looks like new. But this method is only suitable for metal parts. It's about thermal expansion. When metal gets hot, it expands, and when it cools, it tries to shrink. So, when you put ice on the dimple, there's tension inside the metal that causes it to return to its previous shape. You can also use a regular suction cup like the ones they use to transport glass. Just stick it to the dent and then pull. A regular plunger that you use to clean a clogged sink will also work for this. Now, let's try to hide the scratches at the impact site. Try picking up a regular nail polish the same color as your car. Usually, scratches on the bodywork are not deep, and they only damage the top layer of clear coat and don't even penetrate to the layer of paint itself. A fresh batch of nail polish will fill the scratch, and your car will look like new. And if you've damaged your car windshield somehow, and you see little cracks forming there, use transparent nail polish. Again, the nail polish fills in the micro hollows in the crack and keeps it from getting even bigger. Now, a couple of tricks to keep your car clean at all times. Boy, I could use that. Let's start with the headlights. If you can't get the headlights clean from insects after a long drive, use a regular shaver. It can scrape off unwanted dirt that is stuck to the headlights. You can do the same with the windshield. Just don't press too hard or you might scratch the glass. And to keep your headlights clean no matter what, you need to take a regular candle and white spirit and common solvent. Grade the candle and pour it into a glass. Add the solvent to the glass and heat the glass with a hairdryer. Now apply this to your headlights or even your windshield. This will create a protective wax layer that will repel dirt and water droplets. You can also apply wax to your side mirrors and they won't get covered in water when it rains. If your headlights still do get dirty, squeeze some toothpaste on a dry rag and polish your headlights. Toothpaste does a much better job than conventional cleaners. Plus, they don't get cavities. To protect your car's bodywork from dirt and rain, use hair conditioner. Mix 1 portion of the hair conditioner and 2 portions of water. Apply this mixture to the car with a microfiber cloth. It's important to do it to the car when it's as clean as possible. It's perfect timing to do this after you wash it. Then wait 5 minutes and dry the car. This protection will now repel any drops of dirt and rain. Now to the interior. You may have noticed that the windshield and rear window often fog up. This is because the water that is contained in the warm interior air comes into contact with the cold windows of the car. Water condenses, turns into droplets, and stays on the window. Now, take your regular shaving foam and put it on the windshield from the inside. A portion the size of your fist is enough for the entire windshield. Wait a few minutes and wipe the windshield with a dry cloth. The chemicals in the shaving foam will repel water droplets from your windshield so it won't fog up. You can also fight moisture in the interior of the car in the first place. To do this, take an ordinary sock and fill it with kitty litter if your cat doesn't mind. Tie the sock up and just put it in the car. Kitty litter will absorb moisture from the air in the car and your windows will stay dry. And this sock can come in handy in a tough situation. So you're stuck in a field in snowy weather. The wheels are spinning in the snow and your car is standing still. Well, just sprinkle some kitty litter out of the sock right in front of your car's driving wheels. The traction of the wheels will get better and you'll be able to get out of the snow trap. But what if your battery is low in a deserted place? There's no one to help you start the car. Well, get a jack and lift the drive wheels of your car. Make sure you're doing it safely. Now, get a tow rope. You should always have one in your car. Wrap the rope around the wheel so that when you pull it, the wheel simulates movement forward. Put the car in first gear, turn the ignition key. Now start to quickly unwind the rope so that the wheel starts to turn. Voila! The car is started. It's like starting a car by pushing it. It's important to remember that this trick only works with cars with a manual gearbox. If you don't want to spill oil when you pour it into the engine, just put a screwdriver in the hole and pour oil over it. The more advanced option is to use the oil can as a watering can. The thing is, the threads on it fit perfectly with the threads on the engine hole. So take an empty oil can and cut off the bottom. Now screw the canister into the hole and pour oil without fear of spilling it on the engine. If a door handle or lock gets frozen in the winter, use regular hand sanitizer. It'll melt the ice almost instantly. You can also soak a key in hand sanitizer and put it in the lock. You should be able to open it in a few seconds. If you don't have antiseptic, take out an ordinary straw, lean it against the lock, and blow warm air through it. A few minutes of breathing and the lock can be opened. You're charging your phone in the car, but you're tired of long wires that keep getting tangled. No need to cut them. Take your charging wire and wind it around a pencil. Now blow hot air on it with a hairdryer. Just don't overheat the wire. How about that? It now looks like a flexible spring, and its length is much shorter. If you like lemonade or Coke, but don't have a can opener in your car, not a problem. Just use the tip of your seatbelt. Pop! And you can enjoy your favorite drink. If you live in the sunny states, you've often found that the steering wheel of your car sometimes gets so hot you can almost burn your hands. The easiest solution is to turn the steering wheel in the parking lot so that its bottom is up. Once back in the car, you can hold the steering wheel by the cooler top side. Also, if the car gets too hot in the parking lot, just roll down the driver's window. Get out of the car. Now open and close the rear passenger door several times. This will speed up the process of airing the interior, and you won't have to drive in an oven on wheels. When you get out of the car, you may sometimes get an electric shock. This is because of static electricity. You rub your clothes on the seat and then you touch the metal door when you try to close it. At this point, there's an electric shock between your hand and the door. To avoid this, open the door first by touching the body of the car with your hand. You can touch the passenger door from the outside. Then put your foot on the ground and get out of the car. Yay! You avoided an electric shock. If you're a novice driver, you may not have a good feel for the actual size of the car, so you might scratch it by parking it even in your own garage. Just hang a tennis ball from the ceiling so that it touches the windshield or rear window exactly when you need to hit the brakes. Perfect parking and no scratches. If you share the car with someone, you have to constantly move the driver's seat. To simplify this process, you can put little strips of colored tape on the panel under the seat and the driver's door where the seat is in a comfortable position. Now, when adjusting the seat, you just need to put these strips against each other. You can use different colors of tape for each driver. Or the other driver can get their own darn car. An expensive solution indeed. Yes, it is.
In a frosty Canadian park, hidden deep beneath layers of thick ice, scientists discovered a bizarre skeleton they named the Frozen Dragon. The skeleton had been in the frozen ice for millions of years. It took experts decades to work out the species of this strange fossil. It was identified as a new genus of pterosaur. Pterosaurs were massive flying reptiles with wingspans of over 16 feet. Their heads were 3.5 times the size of their bodies. Pterosaurs lived 76 million years ago, when they soared above the dinosaurs. Scientists described them as the biggest, meanest, and most bizarre animals that ever flew. The new genus has been named Cryodracon boreas, which translates to Frozen Dragon of the North Winds. In 2013, a young mountaineer was climbing one of the tallest mountains in Western Europe, Mont Blanc. He noticed a strange metal box poking out of the snow. The mountaineer pried the box open and found that it was filled with precious rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. The climber immediately handed the box to the authorities. It was discovered that the box likely belonged to a passenger on one of 2 flights from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years ago. The box was valued to be worth over $200,000, and authorities are still searching for the heir to the small box of treasures. In northwest Siberia in 2007, a reindeer herder was on an outing with his sons when he noticed something strange in the ice. the man realized it was a frozen mammoth calf and immediately contacted the local museum. The calf was named Luba and was the best preserved mammoth mummy in the world at the time of its discovery. Luba had been in the ice for 41,800 years and is around 30 to 35 days old. From trunk to tail, the mammoth calf is roughly the same size as a large calf. If you're interested in seeing for yourself, Luba travels to museums all around the world. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, covered in layers of ice and snow, is Mount Erebus, the frozen volcano. The volcano was discovered in the middle of an eruption in 1841 by explorers on an Arctic expedition. The volcano is over 12,000 feet tall and has been active for the last 1.3 million years. Deep within the middle of the volcano is a huge crater filled with large volumes of molten lava. The volcano has occasional explosions, which means it's classified as being in continuing eruption. However, these eruptions are nothing to worry about because they're generally rather small. Back in 1991, two hikers were traveling across the Italian Alps when they stumbled across a body that they presumed to belong to a recently lost hiker. The duo trudged back down the mountain to report their unfortunate findings. Once the remains were recovered, it was clear that the body was not recent at all. Scientists determined that the Iceman was more than 5,000 years old and named him Otzi. The discovery was unlike anything scientists had ever before seen because the body was so well preserved. For years, Otzi was studied by scientists who discovered that our ancestors have a lot more in common with us than we ever knew before. Otzi was covered in ink body art. Research done on the contents of his stomach revealed that his last meal was dry cured meat, similar to the bacon we eat today. Otzi has at least 19 relatives living today, somewhere in Central Europe. Scientists were researching ancient squirrel burrows in Siberia when they came across something interesting. One of the squirrels had hidden away precious seeds deep beneath the ground. The seeds had been encased in ice for 32,000 years. The seeds were for the flower Silene stenophilia, which had long since gone extinct. Amazingly, scientists were able to recover plant tissue from inside the seeds and grow an entire crop of flowers. They've since reintroduced the previously extinct flower to natural habitats all across the world. In 1930, a team of Norwegian scientists sailed around the Arctic Ocean, conducting research on the seas and glaciers. They reached White Island, a dangerous and icy land no human had set foot on before, or so they thought. The scientists were shocked to discover the tip of a small boat sticking out of the snow. Frozen inside the boat, they found scientific equipment and various personal items, including a jacket monogrammed S.A. Andre. They had discovered the wreck of the famous Andre Arctic balloon expedition. In 1897, Swedish explorers, led by Andre, attempted to travel to the North Pole by hydrogen balloon. No one had ever heard from them ever again. People only found out what happened to them when the wreck was discovered 33 years later. It turns out that the balloon had crashed on White Island only 2 days after departing from Sweden. The explorers traveled along the island on a small makeshift boat, but were unable to make it any further. The best preserved woolly mammoth ever found was discovered in an area of permafrost in Siberia in 2010. Scientists named the frozen mammoth Yucca, after the small village near where it was found. Yucca had been frozen for 39,000 years and is thought to have been around 6 to 8 years old. Because Yucca is so well preserved, it has been studied for years and provided new information about mammoths. In 2019, scientists reported that they were able to activate cells taken from Yucca's tissue. Maybe one day we'll have woolly mammoths roaming the land. From looking at pictures and videos of Antarctica, the continent appears to be freezing cold, covered in snow, and flat, except for a few small hills. Scientists believe that too. When studying the Gomburtsev Mountains in the early 2000s, they were shocked to discover that the small rocky hills were actually the peak of a gigantic mountain formation under a mile of snow. Using radar technology, researchers worked out that the mountains are really around 10,000 feet tall and sprawl across 750 miles. This is around the same size as the European Alps, except hidden under tons of ice and snow. At a gold mine in Siberia, a businessman was examining a nearby river when he noticed something interesting in the frost. It was a small woolly rhino calf that was later named Sasha. The woolly rhino has been extinct for 15,000 years. It's thought that Sasha could have been frozen in the ice for up to 39,000 years. Sasha is unique because it's the only full-body woolly rhino to have ever been discovered. Glaciers around the northern Italian town of Pelo have begun to melt. Artifacts from decades and even centuries ago have been discovered pouring out of the ice. Personal belongings from soldiers have been found, things like diaries, photographs, and even love letters. Historians have even uncovered an entire cabin preserved beneath the ice. The cabin was filled with hard metal helmets and clothes. In 1845, Sir John Franklin embarked on an ill-fated expedition to the North Pole. The crew traveled on two ships, HMS Erebus and the ironically named HMS Terror. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships were lost to the icy waters. In 2016, the HMS Terror was discovered by a team of researchers. Despite being lost for 170 years, the freezing cold waters had maintained the ship in pristine condition. Scientists described the ship as frozen in time. Dinner plates and glasses were still on shelves, beds and desks were still in order, and even the passengers' luggage appeared to be in good condition. The HMS Erebus was also discovered nearby, but due to changing water conditions, the ship wasn't in great shape. The glacial ice surrounding a mountain passageway in Norway that was notoriously used by the Vikings has revealed hundreds of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a giant unopened wooden box that was welded together. Researchers were beside themselves with anticipation, waiting to open this box. They believed it would be filled with Viking treasures or artifacts that would give us an insight into ancient society. When they opened the box, all that was inside was a plain old beeswax candle. It turns out that this box wasn't actually as old as they thought it was. By analyzing the candle, they discovered that the box dates back to the 17th century. The age of the Vikings had ended by the 11th century. It's likely that the candle box belonged to a farmer who was shipping it from his summer farm to his winter farm to light up the long nights.
You take a giant straw and begin to inflate Saturn. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's enough. Now let's add some giant rings. That's it. This is Super Saturn, also called Saturn on steroids. It's a real object that scientists discovered in 2012, a planet named J1407b. And astronomers are still not sure what it really is. It could be a gas giant, like Jupiter or Saturn in our solar system. Then there would be no solid surface there. And if you wanted to set foot on that planet, you just fall through it, all the way to the core. But it could also be a brown dwarf. That's something between a large planet and a full-fledged star. Such objects have to be heavy enough to start thermonuclear reactions, like those going on inside stars. But the power of these reactions is too weak for brown dwarfs to glow and emit heat. To imagine the size and weight of J1407b, let's look at our Earth. If you put our planet on a scale, it'll show 6 and another 21 zeros tons. Our planet is also about 7,900 miles across. Now, that's Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. Its diameter is 11 times as great as that of Earth. It's also 318 times heavier. If Jupiter were a bucket, you could put 1,321 Earths in it. And this is the hero of the day, Super Saturn. It's almost 20 times as large as Jupiter. To balance the scales, you need to put 6,360 Earths on the other side. The planet's rings are so wide that if they were in the solar system, they would take up more than half the space between the Sun and Earth. And if Super Saturn switched places with the original Saturn, you'd see those rings with the unaided eye. They would be larger than a full moon. Presumably, these rings appeared in the same way as the ones around our Saturn. One theory says they're the remains of a moon that was once there. Its orbit was unstable, and over time, the moon got torn apart by the tidal forces of the huge planet it orbited. Small pieces of the former moon took their places in the giant's orbit. they collided with one another, like in a blender. After some time, everything that was left was basically particles of dust and ice moving around the colossal planet. Another theory suggests that the rings appeared after the moon collided with an asteroid or another moon. Then the gravitational blender did its job and turned the moon's debris into the rings. Some scientists think the rings formed at around the same time as the planet itself, so they're just the remains of the planetary nebula, which is a cloud of gas, space debris, and dust. Later, it probably shrunk and solidified to form a planet. We can only guess where Super Saturn got its rings from, but scientists say their mass is 80% of that of Earth. It may mean that the moon that used to orbit J1407b was about the same size as our planet. There's a little gap in the middle of these rings. Scientists think Super Saturn's moon might be there. If this is the case, it should be about the size of Mars. If scientists are right and Super Saturn is actually a brown dwarf, then this is an incredible discovery. Scientists will be able to watch it age. Supposedly, brown dwarfs lose their energy and shrink, fading in the process. And when a brown dwarf exhausts all its energy, it turns into a black dwarf. It's easy to confuse it with a black hole. People haven't discovered black dwarfs anywhere in the universe yet, because they take trillions and quadrillions of years to form. Our universe is too young, and none of the stars, even those that appeared when the universe was born, have had time to become black dwarfs. One of the oldest objects in the universe is the white dwarf, with a pretty long name, WD0346+246. It's about 11 to 12 billion years old and half as cold as our sun, and it's still cooling. It would need around 10 plus another 15 zeros years to turn into a black dwarf. For comparison, the universe is 1.4 and 10 zeros years old. Scientists believe that a black dwarf will exist for about 10 plus 25 zeros years, feeding on dark matter. After that, its protons, the smallest particles of matter, will begin to decay. And then, the black dwarf will simply evaporate. That will take another 10 plus 49 zeros years. But if the protons remain intact, a much more interesting scenario will await the black dwarf. In another 10 and 1500 zeros years, the black dwarf will become an iron star. It's essentially just a cannonball in space. The iron sphere will exist billions of times longer than our entire universe has existed, until it suddenly turns into a black hole. So, the process of the formation of a black dwarf is extremely long. It'd take a regular star an insane amount of time to age that much. But Super Saturn, if it is a brown dwarf, may be much closer to this state. Saturn on steroids is not the only strange planet in our universe. This is Gliese 436b. It's been detected using the transit method. A transit happens when a planet moves between its host star and an observer. It looks similar to a lunar eclipse. This planet is 4 times the size of Earth and 22 times as heavy. That's almost like Neptune. It's an exotic water world. The water there is solid, but it's not ice. It has a temperature of about 520 degrees Fahrenheit. The water in your pot turns into steam at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. But on Gliese 436b, the liquid remains solid because of the extreme pressure on the planet. Scientists have also discovered that the planet's atmosphere is evaporating into outer space. That's why there's a giant circular cloud around it. It's constantly moving in its orbit, giving the planet a long tail that looks like that of a comet. Cancri E holds incredible riches worth more than all the money on Earth. There are diamonds scattered all over the planet. Cancri E is about twice as wide and 8 times as heavy as Earth. This planet doesn't rotate. Only one of its sides always faces its host star. The surface temperature there is almost twice as high as the temperature of a burning fire. And since the host star is rich in carbon, the planet contains plenty of this element too. The intense pressure and temperatures help turn carbon into graphite and diamonds. Unfortunately, this planet is 40 light years away from our home, so it'd take about 730,000 years to get there on a regular rocket. Another planet rich in gems is HAT P7b. It's about 1,000 light years away from Earth. It's 60% as large and nearly twice as heavy as Jupiter. The planet is so close to its host star that it makes one revolution around it in just 2 Earth days. Because of such close proximity to the star, Hat P7b is almost as hot as a white dwarf. If you look at the night side of this planet, you'll see unusual clouds. Scientists believe that these clouds may be rich in corundum material. This is the very substance that forms rubies and sapphires, so it's likely to rain very expensive and beautiful gems there. WASP 12b is one of the darkest planets ever discovered. Only one of its sides faces its host star. The planet's surface is so dark that it eats up about 94% of all visible light, so it looks a lot like a black hole. The host star heats up the planet so much that the material there continuously evaporates. Then the star's strong gravity pulls this cloud toward itself, forming a disk. But TRES-2b is the champion. It's the darkest planet known to people. It absorbs 99% of the light coming from its star, which means it consumes more light than a piece of coal. 1% of the remaining light looks red as it gets reflected by this gas giant. From afar, this planet looks very evil. One of the oldest planets in the universe is PSR B1620-26b. It's about 12.7 billion years old. This means that it formed about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its two host stars have had time to evolve. One is a white dwarf. The other is a pulsar that makes almost 100 revolutions per second. Sunrises on this planet must be stunning. Right now, this star system is moving toward a dense cluster of stars. This is likely to lead to a stellar collision, so the fate of this planet is unknown. Kepler 438b is one of the most Earth-like planets. It's only 12% larger and is in the habitable zone of its host star, not too close and not too far away. It's a sweet spot where water doesn't evaporate because of the heat and doesn't turn into ice because of the cold. This planet might host life on its surface. In the future, it may also become a new home for humanity, but it would take people about 470 years to get to this planet, even if we traveled at the speed of light, which is impossible due to the laws of physics.
We're in Siberia. It's so cold here that freezing gusts of wind are burning your face. All that white snow seems to be blinding you. This place resembles Antarctica because of the permafrost. Recently, a group of scientists researched one of the local rivers. With the help of a drilling rig, they extracted several samples of frozen soil. The scientists were shocked to find living creatures inside the ice. Later in the laboratory, they realized that the creatures were microscopic multi-celled organisms known as deloid rotifers. These creatures looked like little worms. Scientists knew that these worms could live in frozen conditions for up to 10 years. But the age of the rotifers found in the ice was about 24,000 years. And after defrosting, they began to reproduce, as if they had been sleeping for several hours, not thousands of years. Further analysis showed that these organisms could stay frozen for hundreds of thousands of years. The rotifers might have lived during the time when people didn't invent the wheel yet. And this isn't their only superpower. Deloid rotifers are among the most radioactively resistant animals on Earth. They can survive in places where there's no oxygen and water. They can also stay alive in areas with high acidity and can live without food and water for a long time. By the way, these are not the only creatures that are known for living for thousands of years. Particular types of moss and some microorganisms are also almost immortal. Nematodes, also called roundworms, are some of the most adaptive varieties of worms in the world. Imagine the Eiffel Tower standing tall and proud. And now, let's make it 10 times higher and place it underground. Exactly at this depth, many thousands of feet under the surface, scientists discovered these creatures. There's no sunlight and almost no air in this place. And since it's much closer to Earth's core than the surface of our planet, the temperature here is higher than in the middle of the hottest desert. Millions of tons of soil above create insane pressure. But all this couldn't prevent life from developing here. When roundworms run out of air, food, or when the temperature becomes too high, they get into a unique state of stasis, or deep hibernation. In this mode, the worm's metabolism slows down, and almost all the processes in their bodies stop. The creatures can sleep for a very long time, and only wake up when the environment becomes more livable. By the way, you don't have to go so deep underground to find these creatures. Nematodes are found all over the world. They can live in hot springs, deserts, high in the mountains, among the harsh ices of Antarctica, or inside animals and humans. Our next invulnerable creatures are tardigrades, also known as water bears. These are microscopic 8-legged invertebrates closely related to arthropods. It's impossible to see them with the unaided eye. But a conventional microscope will allow you to see tardigrades in detail. They look like minuscule bears. They're called water bears because they need a thin layer of water around their bodies at all times. It's necessary to prevent dehydration. Tardigrades have been found in all kinds of environments, from ocean depths to sand dunes. They're incredibly robust, thanks to their unique organism structure. Yeah, they look soft, but their body is covered with a tough cuticle. This coating resembles the exoskeletons of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed their old layer of the cuticle when they need to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The bears can survive at a temperature that's almost 3 times as cold as the temperature in the ice of Antarctica. Heat doesn't harm them either. They have been proved to survive at the temperature that makes water boil. Also, water bears are not afraid of radiation and high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of the strongest metals, but these creatures can withstand pressures 6 times greater. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field. This is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't need this protection. They can go into near-Earth orbit and come back unharmed, all thanks to a protein protecting their DNA from ionizing radiation. Like other immortal organisms, water bears can fall into a state of cryptobiosis. Tardigrades pull their head and legs inside their bodies and fall asleep. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, or experiencing a lack of oxygen, they will remain in this barrel form until the situation improves. So those are microscopic organisms and microbes that can only be seen through a microscope. But how about something bigger? Meet ironclad beetles. They live in the southwestern US and Mexico. These insects cannot survive high temperatures, live without oxygen, or in conditions of increased radiation. But their shells are so tough that they can only be pierced with a drill or hammer. Their durable exoskeletons are made of a special substance, chitin. It can also be found in the armor of crabs or shrimp. And still, the chitin of the ironclad beetle is so durable that it allows this creature to withstand the impact of a car moving at high speed. In times of danger, they can hide their whiskers and strong legs in special recesses in their shell. Other animals can't bite through the armor, so they spit the beetle out and leave to look for lunch somewhere else. As soon as the danger disappears, the bug stretches out its legs again and goes about its business. Also, the armor saves the beetles from dehydration, which is very useful in hot areas of Mexico and the southwestern US. Inside the exoskeleton, they can store moisture. In other words, these bugs can absorb water whenever they find it and transport this liquid inside themselves. The next creatures are incredibly fragile, but they know how to survive in places where almost no other animals can live. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can notice a pit. This is a mine leading deep underground. The air on the surface of our planet usually contains around 20% oxygen, but in the mine, it's only 10%. Inside the cave, the air also has an increased content of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. People can't breathe there without an oxygen tank. We can probably say that the water and air there are poisoned. Almost no animals would be able to survive here. Still, 48 species of living organisms have been found in this cave. 33 of them are newly discovered species. And they aren't the only microbes or bacteria that can't be seen without a microscope. Something bigger lives here. Strange white snails crawl over the walls of the mines. Transparent shrimp and a bunch of unknown kind of leeches swim in the water. White centipedes with huge whiskers and creepy white spiders run on the ground. And they all have been growing here for almost 5 million years. You might notice a water scorpion and another unidentified species of this animal. It doesn't look like its relatives living in hot sands or tropical forests. No living creature here looks ordinary at all. All animals are either white or transparent. They have no eyes, but are equipped with long paws and antennae whiskers that help them navigate in this dark space. The deeper you go into the cave, the less oxygen the air contains. But the number of living organisms is increasing. The air is filled with methane and carbon dioxide. All the inhabitants of this cave have never seen the light of the sun and have never gone out of the darkness. It seems impossible to survive in such conditions where plants don't produce oxygen. The answer to the question of their survival is hidden in a small lake. The surface of the water is covered with strange foam. If you look closely, you can see that this white substance is alive. It resembles soft, wet paper that is easy to tear. The thing is billions of living organisms, bacteria called autotrophs. There's much more carbon dioxide in the cave than there is outside, and these bacteria, like plants, absorb it. But they don't do this with the help of photosynthesis, which means they don't need sunlight. They use water for chemosynthesis. What these bacteria secrete is food for other bacteria, and these other bacteria are food for bigger creatures. A unique food cycle that you can't find anywhere else on the planet only exists here.
More than 50 ships and 20 planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle since the middle of the 19th century. This region isn't put on any paper map and is not an official region of the Atlantic. This massive water area is located not far from the southeastern coast of the U.S. and still scares many sailors. But you aren't afraid and want to prove that there is nothing special in this place. You sail to the center of the Bermuda Triangle on a small fishing boat. You turn off the engine and wait. Several hours pass. The sun goes below the horizon. Night comes. You're about to return to the shore, but suddenly, it becomes too quiet. Then, you hear a splash of water. You look overboard and see hundreds of fish swimming to the surface. Something big scared them away. Something that comes straight from the depths. The next second, you notice big sparkling eyes and long tentacles reaching for the boat. It seems that one of the most terrible myths about the Bermuda Triangle turned out to be true. A huge squid dragging ships to the bottom. Stories about these squids appeared long before the emergence of the Bermuda Triangle myths. For centuries, sailors from Norway and Greenland told stories about a scary sea monster, the Kraken. In those stories, the Kraken broke the decks of ships with its giant tentacles and dragged them to the bottom. The approach of this creature is impossible to see since it's coming to you not from the side, but from below. But all these were just stories. Only in the 19th century, scientific evidence of the existing of these monsters appeared. A beak of an unknown squid was found on the coast of Denmark. The size of the find was about 3 inches in diameter, which is about the size of a human palm. Then, it became clear that the Kraken was real, and it's just one variety of giant squid. Since then, more than 21 species of giant squid have been described, but the first video with this monster was recorded in 2004 in the waters of North Atlantic, not far from the Bermuda Triangle. Marine biologists used a lure to draw the squid out of the depths. The huge monster was about 30 feet long, which is about half a subway car. It suddenly appeared out of the ocean darkness and quickly attacked the lure, squeezing it with its tentacles. After that, many cases of squid have been recorded on photos and video. Huge squids were washed up on the shore, swam past ships. According to some records, the largest monster ever found was 59 feet long and weighed almost a ton. This is the size of a big bus. Some scientists believe that giant squids can reach 150 feet in length, which is almost twice the size of a basketball court. But the big size is not enough to sink a ship. The first thing that helps squids do this is the surprise effect. Squids come from the depths, which mean they can be seen from the deck, but the monster can see a boat from afar. It has the biggest eyes in the world. One eye is about the size of a basketball. The eyesight of a giant squid allows them to see prey in the Black Sea depths and from a big distance. Most sea creatures on the planet can't see in such conditions. So, the squid notices your ship and decides that it's food. It quickly approaches the boat and attacks with its tentacles. The squid has 8 limbs and 2 extra longer tentacles the monster uses to bring food to the beak-shaped mouth. The others are covered with dozens of suction cups filled with sharp teeth. Nothing can escape if the squid grabs it. The squid wraps its tentacles around your boat. With the teeth on each arm, it bites the deck. 2 long tentacles can grab you while you're running around in panic. The squid can rock the ship from side to side until one of its parts sinks in the water. You fight off 2 long tentacles and fall off your feet. The squid's 8 arms are squeezing stronger. You can hear the boat's hull cracking. The squid is big, but still can't sink a large metal object. Possibly, it couldn't have sunk huge ships that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. You see how the squid swims away into the depths. You're lucky this time, but you definitely wouldn't handle 2 such monsters. The existence of giant squids was proven more than 150 years ago, but people still don't know anything about them. The fact is that they are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They swim fast, spending most of their time at depths of 1,300 to 3,000 feet. To descend there, people need sturdy submarines and bulky equipment that create a lot of noise. The squid will notice them much earlier and swim away. Scientists don't know anything about their behavior, social life, habits, or a distance they swim during the day. And most importantly, we don't know how many of them are hidden in the water. The ocean is only 5% explored. It's possible that millions of giant squids swim in the sea depths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's bodies with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holes and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. You start the engine to swim to the shore and notice that about 30 tentacles are reaching out to you from the water. 3 giant squids squeeze the boat from all sides and pull it down. It looks like there's no way out. You look overboard and see black eyes looking right at you. At this moment, you find a solution. Squids spend their whole life in darkness and are afraid of the light. Fortunately, you have a signal rocket. You use it to scare the monsters away. Squids go back down into the water, but apparently not for long. You release a few more rockets into the ocean and scream in fear. The red light illuminates the sea darkness, and you see hundreds of moving tentacles. They quickly swim away from the fire to a safe distance. At full throttle, you're sailing to the shore and releasing all the signal fires into the water. You don't give the squids a chance to get close to you. Finally, you get to land, confident that you will never return to this place. The bad news is, these creatures swim not only in the Bermuda Triangle. People found giant squid in the oceans all over the world. Yeah, it's possible the giant squid is the main reason for the disappearance of ships, but this doesn't make the Bermuda Triangle a unique place. Boats and cargo ships disappear all over the Atlantic Ocean. The Triangle is not even included in the top 10 of such places. Also, this area is one of the most popular shipping routes of the Atlantic. And the more ships sail in one place, the more ships are lost. Many scientists believe the reason of the disappearances here is strong storms and hurricanes. Bermuda is located in an area of high pressure, which diverts thunderstorms towards the Triangle. The waves reach such sizes here that they can turn ships over. Thunder and frequent flashes of lightning disable planes. The Earth's magnetic field is weakened at the location of the Triangle. This field works as a shield, which repels solar particles. Here, solar radiation passes through the upper layers of the atmosphere and can negatively affect the electronics operation. Also, there is a theory that says that the Bermuda Triangle is the center of a magnetic anomaly. But scientists made many checks of the magnetic map of this region and haven't found any oddities.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more